All right. Today, live review of the Deanston 2008 vintage 9-year-old brandy cask finish. This is from the Deanston distillery, which is a CVH Spirits owned distillery. This is Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. This is at cask strength, 56.4% ABV, or 112.8 proof. It is non-chill filtered, natural color, and of course, this one was distilled in 2008. So for 9 years old, that means it would have to be bottled in 2017, which is a while ago. So I'm not really sure how I came across this in 2024, but seems like it must have been old stock. I don't know, but I'm glad that I did anyway. Either way, um, so yeah, 2008 vintage, 9-year-old, and this is 8 years aged in refill ex bourbon, so fairly neutral refill ex bourbon cask. And then 2 years finished in ex French brandy. So that makes 10, but it like probably wasn't, probably all the liquid wasn't quite 8 and 2, right? It was probably up just about. So like they couldn't put 10 years old. It's almost 10 years old, but it's officially a 9-year old, but probably pretty close to a 10-year age statement, but they couldn't quite use that. So this one is a little different. What the fuck was that? Thanks, YouTube. And that's the other thing that keeps happening that I just noticed. The fucking sometimes YouTube will refresh its chat and it just dumps it all into my fucking log like that. It's been doing that too. That drives me nuts. So now I have this fucking shit to fix on top of all the other crap. Which this problem just came out of absolute nowhere. Anyway, yeah, so brandy cask finish, and again, I'm assuming this is just like grape brandy, right? It's not cognac finish, um, but as far as I know, it's not like apple or pear brandy or something like that. It's just a typical French brandy. So we'll see how we feel about it today. I've had not too much out of this bottle, and if I remember right, it is absolutely delicious. But we'll see how we feel about it in this moment. We will rate it out of 100. 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 25 for finish, 10 for texture, and 15 for my personal experience. Bop. Get that spinning. I'm like divided if I like want to put this with the light on or like light off, but have the tube up here. You guys can tell me what you prefer. I'm not decided which one makes the most sense. Kind of like having both up there, but then you can't use the light. Then again, the light doesn't make much of a difference half the time. All right, so here's our, again, natural color here. It's kind of an overpour for me, but that's okay. We'll just drink it all. That's like fucking a whole Glen. That's so much. That's so much whiskey. Um, so yeah, mostly ex bourbon, but again, it's a refill ex bourbon. Um, so for this natural color for 10 years, probably the 2-year brandy cask is what gives it the most of its color. 'Cause a lot of the, for example, Deanstons that I've experienced, like for example the 18-year-old, they use first fill bourbon casks for those bottles, and those bottles come out way paler than this for natural color. This is much darker than your typical like regular bourbon cask, first fill bourbon cask, first and second fill bourbon cask Deanston. So that 2 years in brandy is really kind of driving the color behind this particular bottle. And the thing is, I can't remember what I thought of this one in terms of notes last time we had it. Probably there's going to be some amount of um, wine related brandy kind of grapey notes, but can't actually remember how we judged the neck pour on this one. It's been a little while. Pretty decent legs going on in that. That's a little bit of extra time because it's cask strength. We just got off yesterday with the Glenallachie 10-year cask strength batch 11. And that took a lot of time for me to kind of really get into, despite it wasn't even over 60% alcohol. And I kind of felt like it really needed lots of rest before it kind of really showed its true aromas. It was pretty spiky, which is different. Like, for example, we had that release 4 of the Highland Park cask strength, which my understanding is a 14-year-old whiskey. It's non-age statement, but I think the liquid in it's about 14 years old. And that one, despite it being 64 and change percent alcohol, was way like easier to get into, way less spiky. And I don't know if it's age related, but it would make some amount of sense that maybe if it's a little bit older, it's not as harsh. But you would think for that level of alcohol, it would kind of still really be pretty spiky. But we got into that one fairly easy. So again, there's all these little differences. Every little thing counts when it comes to single malt. And of course, Deanston is a almost entirely old school distillery. No like fancy gadgets, no electronics, the old school method. No computers, all that traditional stuff, basically. See what we can get out of this. Right off the rip, there's a little bit of that cocoa powder, which, man, I don't know what that is. I think it's maybe, like, again, related to alcohol or something, man. Every time I get one of these kind of really, like, wine cask related whiskeys, I feel like I get cocoa powder, like, right at the beginning, and it kind of goes away. Like, happens every time. So I'm thinking it might be related to just alcohol vapors or something. Having a hard time getting into this as it is. There's a little bit more in the glass than I'm used to recently, so that might impact it a little bit. Really, the thing that stands out the most about this is it's very winey, very much on that like wine grape kind of note. There's also like some lighter dried fruits like apricot, like dried apricot. Maybe some raisin in there. But it's very much on like kind of like that fresh wine grape sort of note. Which would make some amount of sense. A little bit spicy. That's the most I'm getting out of this right off the rip. And I think it's just, it's actually not that complicated. But I think like maybe this needs a little bit more rest for how much I poured into it. Because again, recently I've been pouring like maybe like 2/3 as much. So it's probably just taking some extra time for that to really rest up here. This. Yeah, mostly like that winey, grapey note, some dried fruit, like lighter and darker, like raisin, apricot dried. Some spicy components. Some still maltiness in there. It's coming around. It's coming around. It'll be better in like a couple minutes, I think. Alright, let's kick it off though. Deanston, 9-year-old Brandy Cask. Finish. Cask strength on the sludge. Similar to the like aroma, you get some of that like malty character with that like kind of grapey, winey kind of grape experience. Dried fruit is in there, spiciness in the back palate. Into the finish, you get some of that oakiness. It does kind of taste again like that kind of like typical Deanston sort of profile. Where it's a little bit oaky and like slightly waxy. All right, there we go. Now we're in with like some of that sweet honey. Some of that vanilla is getting in there. And that like sort of grapey note is like some it's kind of rich and syrupy a little bit. It's like honey on grapes and apricots. Again, some still like nondescript spice on the nose. Did you get that vanilla in there too? Yeah, that's showing up quite nicely now. As soon as that like honey, kind of sweet, syrupy honey kind of thing kicks into the nose, it kind of really brings it together. But there is still like a slight like waxy tone to it and like a slight maltiness. It's not like it's not overshadowed and it's not buried, it's in there. Yeah, sometimes you get in there, it feels like honey, and sometimes you get in there, it feels like more syrupy. And the more we're nosing this, the less I'm getting of like that grape note, and the more I'm getting like the sweetnesses and the malts. Mm, or that like weird spice and like slight waxiness. Yeah, surprisingly oaky on the palate, really. Um, but again, you do still get like that dried fruit malt character. That sweetness is in there, spiciness, and into the finish, spiciness spikes. You get the like barrel oaky character, malts in there too, slightly waxy on the finish. Um, so maybe just a touch of those sweet notes on the back end. Finish is not terribly long though. We'll call it medium. I say not terribly long like every fucking time. I gotta like get like a different set of words. If it's not long, I say it's not terribly long. It's medium. It's medium. It's not long, it's medium. But I won't say it's not terribly long. I catch myself on that phrase. Yeah, I think I just poured a little bit too much and it's taken some time to kind of like come around, but that's okay. Again, I've been pouring closer to like 30 milliliters and this was definitely like a 50. Sometimes you just, you know, you need some extra, a little bit extra, you know, you need to have a good sample size, you know. Yeah, mostly that honey, syrupy maltiness on the nose now. That like fruity character is like gone or in the backseat. Yeah, it's gonna like all converted into this like honey, sweet maltiness. Like how it's nosing right now. I probably wouldn't even guess it was like a brandy cask. Like I would almost guess it's like first fill ex bourbon, based on how it's nosing like at this moment. It's like all that brandy kind of grapey sweetness thing. It's kind of like gone out of it, or I'm nose blind to it, or whatever. It's kind of like similar on the palate. It's like the first couple sips, you were getting some of that brandy note, and now it kind of feels like it's all just sweet nothings, you know? There's like one place on the finish where it feels like, oh, there's like a wine influence, like a maybe like a brandy influence here, but the rest of it is all kind of like, at this point, just kind of nice, you know? It's just kind of nice, but my worry for this is like, hey, what's with the brandy thing? You know, it's like, yeah, you got that in there at first, like that kind of grapey, brandy, dried fruit thing, and you get a little bit of it on the tail end after you've had a few sips. But like those first two sips is really where you get much of that, at least for me. And now I'm in this place where like I couldn't even tell you this had a brandy cask finish to it or anything like that. So um, the one thing that's hitting me right now about this bottle is I kind of feel like maybe something missed opportunity. Um, something um, like maybe this could have been done in a way where that brandy cask was really part of the mix here, but and it's not that you don't get any of it at all. It's just that it kind of feels rather light, and then it's gone out of it, and then you have this nice, pleasant, cask strength, sweet, um, refill bourbon Deanston thing going on, and I love that, but it's like missing that like thing where you're like, oh, this is the cool, different brandy thing I'm looking for that this bottle does. It's cool and different, and it's brandy. It's not quite hitting like that. Mm, Let me just move this a little bit for you guys on vertical. I'm sorry, the camera's a little fucked up. So let's focus on the aroma here. Out of 25, still pretty nice. Again, you got some nice progression in there. You initially had some like dried fruit, slight winey grapey note, some spice, and that kind of transitioned into like again like vanillas and honeys and syrups and malts. You're back. Welcome back. Slight waxiness to it. Even maybe a little bit of oak on the nose. Like it's quite it's intense, great aromas, pleasant whiskey. If we're going to ignore like whatever we feel about like whether it's brandy cask done well or not, just on its own merits, how do we feel about it at a 25? Again, no like vast layers, aromatic complexity, but still strong, intense, nice notes. I'm going to give it 18 on aroma. So now we're going to talk about the palate at 25, which, again, pretty tasty, some clear definition between flavors. This is something that I like. It's kind of like a thing that I didn't like quite think about too much at first, but the more and more I'm experiencing whiskeys, it's almost like there's a clear craft in making some, especially on the palate, like clear, crisp, like definitive notes and characteristics, as opposed to like flavors that are sort of muddled and messed together that are hard to get picked through. I think that really has something to do with the quality of the blend here, or I suppose the barrel, but it's sweet, some dried raisin, oakiness on the palate, spices on the back end. Not the most well defined, like for example, if we can give a crazy example, how well defined the like Lafroig 2024 Cartridge is. That one is like the staple for me for how well defined flavors and crystal defined flavors are. A little bit muddled like compared to that, but still pretty good, pretty intense. Good set of flavors. Not my favorite part of the dram though. We'll call the palate 60. Really on intensity alone for the most part, actually. If this was like a 46% alcohol product, I probably would give it less. So now on to the finish, which again is kind of like medium in length. Again, you have some spike and that spiciness, malty character, some underlying sweetness, some waxiness in there too. Kind of ride out on the oaky notes. It's a nice nose. It's not making me think about it though. Right at first, the spiciness spikes, some oakiness in there, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of that waxy character. There's some amount of like dried fruit element that is reminiscent of like a sherry cask in the finish. Again, finishing on malts and oak. Kind of like the finish. Seems pretty good. I like it about 17. All right, so now we're going to talk about the texture, really analyze the texture, which I haven't thought about up until this point. So to me, it's probably somewhere in the middle. Texture is kind of like one of these interesting things where, like, if you're into the palate and you don't really consider the texture very much, like it's not notably thin or notably thick, you can kind of like rely on it being in the middle. One of the things that like I think of texture related, like really like thick and luscious textures, is like anytime I've had Ardbeg Korvreken, like as soon as you get that whiskey in your mouth, you can just tell how lovely the texture is. It is so notable that even though it's a strong, basically cask strength, heavily peated Ardbeg product, the texture is still of note. That's how good the texture of the whiskey is. So when it's not hitting me like that, I kind of know already that I'm not going to give it like a crazy score. But, you know, again, we're talking about 56% alcohol. It's still going to be like pretty good. It's not watery or thin. Probably like a 7. It's pretty good, but it's nothing crazy. I'll call that a low velvet. All right. Now to my experience out of 15. How do I feel about this whiskey? My personal subjective opinion, which is I wanted to like it more. That's what we'll hit with. I wanted to like it more. I wanted the brandy cask to do more. I wanted it to do something interesting, something that you didn't really get. And to me, it kind of comes across like a sherry cask. Like it feels like it almost feels sherried, but when you get in there right at the start, you can tell it's not sherry. You can tell it's like a little bit more grapey, a little bit more cognac kind of note. Like the note that I get reminds me of a cognac cask. It's slightly grapey and winey, right in the like initial stages of tasting and nosing it. That's when you get it. This slight grapey, winey, cognac-y kind of note, which again, cognac is for the most part, a great brandy, right? So, in that way, it's similar to cognac finish. You know, probably it's just similar to a cognac barrel. But again, I guess the thing that separates this from like a true cognac barrel for me is it kind of felt more kind of sherry-ish. Like there was more kind of sherry sort of things in it. For me, like closer to a sherried whiskey in some aspects than like a cognac whiskey. But it just wasn't different enough. It gave me a little bit of that sherry kind of note and a little bit of that cognac barrel kind of note, but it wasn't its own thing. I love the proof, great intensity of flavors. It's honestly it's delicious. Like it's tasty, great nose, but it's not like a giant floral bouquet of layered complexity on the nose. The palate is like mostly just fine with like a little bit of grapey cognac thing at first. Finish is again just mostly fine. It kind of rides on the fact that it's a cask strength product. The flavors that are available are very intense, and you get a variety of flavors, but nothing like making it stand out really. It's like, oh, it's got, that sweet honey, and it's got some dried fruits, almost kind of like a sherry cask, and it's got some grapey thing, kind of like a cognac cask, but those kind of go away after a while. And then the rest of it kind of feels like almost like first fill ex bourbon realm. Now, like maybe it's the kind of thing where since this is a refill ex bourbon at cask strength, it kind of feels like maybe a lower proof whiskey and a first fill ex bourbon barrel. But for the most part, it's kind of just sweet and malty, not fruity. I guess. I guess that's the one thing about this particular Deanston that I feel like you get more in some of their other offerings, is those ones are more on the orchard fruits, and this one was kind of like more darker, thicker sweetnesses with that like slightly brandy kind of dried fruit, maybe grapey thing going on, but kind of like subsides, and you kind of just actually good oak hit on this too, which was I kind of wasn't quite expecting. A little bit oaky too. So this is just a roundabout way of saying that like I really like the whiskey, but I wanted it to be like this thing where like, oh, it's a unique, interesting thing. You can't. Why would you select this bottle over another bottle? Well, it's got a unique brandy cask thing about it that makes it interesting, and it really didn't hit me like that. It kind of hit me like, well, cognac cask thing does similar thing. Sherry cask does kind of a similar thing. It didn't really like grab my attention in that way, like, oh, this is new and interesting, unexplored territory, this is why you would buy this. Instead it was kind of like nice, but not out of the box. So for me, this kind of lands probably around 7 out of 15, which is again distinct, nice whiskey, good age statement, or not age statement, good proof, good price. Again, we don't rate on price, but just for saying's sake, good price for this kind of expression. But nothing that is like wowing me. I wanted to be wowed, and I wasn't wowed. So we total this up 18 and 16 and 17 and 7 and 7. This is still 65. We still give this a 65 out of 100, which is barely great. It's still barely great. The benchmark for great is 64. So it's still great. It's still a great whiskey. It is. It is a great whiskey. Despite the things that I said about it, it's still a great whiskey. It's still really good. The problem is it's not like that mid-70s interesting brandy thing that I wanted it to be. It's not, pushing the upper echelons, It's not like, oh man, this is so good, It's just pretty good. I wish it was more. I just wanted more. I wanted it to be more, and it's not more. But it's still damn good.